Hello, my name is Rob Grieve. I'm a former member of the Queen's Own Rifles and also a volunteer of the Queen's Own Rifles Regimental Museum in Casa Loma. I'm here tonight to talk about the Snyder Enfield Rifle. The Queen's Own Rifles were initially issued Enfield pattern 1853 muskets, which are muzzle-loading rifles firing a 5.77-inch bullet. Loading this rifle was accomplished by measuring amount of black powder and pushing this down the barrel with a bullet and a cloth wadding down in the barrel into the chamber. Firing the loaded rifle was accomplished when the shooter squeezes the trigger, releasing the hammer to strike a percussion cap, which then ignites the powder. Reloading these rifles does take time and can be a troublesome process during wet weather or while under enemy fire. The British Empire used these muzzle-loading rifles from 1853 to 1867, after which most of these muzzle-loading rifles were converted to a breech-loading system. This pattern of breech-loading rifle was the primary rifle used during the Battle of Lime Ridge, commonly known as Ridgeway. The example I have here is a Snyder Enfield rifle that has been modified to use a breech-loading cartridge. The cartridge contains the powder and a 5.77 bullet packed together in one cartridge. Breech loading is faster and less labor-intensive. This pattern of rifle was in wide Canadian service from the 1860s to 1901 as one of the most widely used rifles of the Snyder variation. I'm now going to talk about the Lee Enfield rifle, which was widely used in the British Commonwealth from the turn of the century in 1896 right up to 1950. Again, there are very many variations of the Lee Enfield rifle, and I'm going to discuss the two most commonly used rifles by the Queen's Own Rifles as well as the British Commonwealth. The Lee Enfield is a bolt-action 303-inch rifle with a detachable 10-round magazine. Over 17 million Lee Enfields have been made, and this rifle is still in service around the world. In 1896, the Canadian militia received the Mark I Long Lee Enfield, and this rifle was used during the Boer War. Design changes were made, and the Queen's Own Rifles used an updated Mark III version of the Lee Enfield during the First World War. After World War I, other product improvements were made, and the updated Mark IV Lee Enfield was created. The example I'm pointing to is a Mark IV pattern that was used by Canada during the Second World War, the Korean War, and into the late 1950s. In the early part of World War II, Canada purchased rifles directly from England, and due to their long delivery time frames, Canada decided to set up a manufacturing plant here in Long Branch, Ontario. The No. 4 Lee Enfield was widely used by the Canadian Rangers until 2016. A .22 caliber version of the Lee Enfield called the No. 7 was used as a training rifle. The Lee Enfield is a battle-hardened rifle and served Canada well during its time of need. Following World War II, many countries around the world were looking to modernize their firearms in their inventories. In the 1950s, Fabrique Nationale in Belgium developed a self-loading rifle using a 7.62 millimeter cartridge. This struck the interest of many countries around the world. As all the NATO countries wanted a version of this rifle, the original FN rifle was designed in Belgium using metric measurements, and Canada took the lead to update the specifications over to use British imperial measurements. In 1955, Canada was the first NATO country to adopt this Belgian-designed firearm, and it was designated as the FNC1A1. Thousands of FNC1s were manufactured under license by the Canadian Arsenals Limited in Long Branch, Ontario. The FNC1 is a semi-automatic rifle that weighs 4.99 kilograms and is incorporated with a box magazine holding 10 rounds of 7.62 ammunition. A fully automatic version of the FNC1 was made that incorporated a heavier barrel, a 30-round box magazine, and a bipod. This version was designated the FNC2. The FNC1 and C2 served as Canada's standard battle rifles from the early 1950s to 1984 when it began to be phased out. This rifle platform has seen service in militaries around the world. Although it is a bit heavy and firing a large 7.62 cartridge, the FN was well liked and respected by many soldiers who used it. In the 1980s, when the FNC1 was replaced by the lighter C7, many old soldiers preferred the heavier FN.